Evelyn sat hunched over her kitchen table, the soft buzz of the refrigerator filling the silence of her one-bedroom apartment. The bills were stacked in a messy pile, some opened, some still sealed, but all of them carried the same message: not enough. Not enough money to cover rent, not enough to pay utilities, not enough to keep her head above water. She rubbed her temples, her eyes stinging from hours of scrolling through job boards that seemed to offer nothing more than dead ends. Her chest tightened with that familiar mix of dread and exhaustion. She had done everything she thought she was supposed to: worked hard, stayed late, said yes when her boss dumped more tasks on her, but nothing seemed to change. It felt like she was trapped in a cycle that spun her deeper into scarcity. One rainy evening, desperate for some distraction, Evelyn wandered into a second-hand bookstore she'd passed 100 times but never entered. The air inside smelled of old paper and dust, like secrets waiting to be discovered. She moved aimlessly between shelves until her eyes fell on a book so worn its title was nearly unreadable. She picked it up, tracing the faint gold letters, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. Something about the title tugged at her. She wasn't into self-help books, but she felt compelled, as though the book had been waiting for her. She paid the few dollars and carried it home under her coat, as if sheltering something fragile. That night, curled up on her couch, she began to read. The words leapt off the page, so unlike anything she had ever encountered. "Your word is your wand," Florence declared. Evelyn whispered the line out loud, feeling the weight of it roll over her tongue. The idea was absurd, wasn't it? How could words change her life? Yet, as she read on, the author spoke with such clarity, such conviction, that Evelyn felt a shiver crawl down her spine. Florence wrote that the universe was listening, always, and that words were not casual sounds. They were commands. She described how wealth, love, and opportunity could be summoned by the language one chose to speak. Evelyn closed the book and sat in silence, staring at the stack of bills. She laughed bitterly at first. Did the universe really care if she said she wanted $1 million? But the laugh quickly faded, replaced by a dangerous thought. What if it's true? What if she had been sabotaging herself with the words she repeated daily? I'm broke. I can't afford this. Life is hard. She remembered reading another line. By your words you are justified, and by your words you are condemned. Slowly, she stood and walked to the window. Outside, the rain streaked the glass, city lights glowing faintly beyond the storm. She took a deep breath and whispered, I now command wealth. I call forth my first $1 million. It is mine by divine right. The words trembled at first, her voice shaking with doubt. She half expected thunder to crash or something magical to happen instantly, but the only response was the hum of her refrigerator and the patter of rain. Still, the act of saying it filled her with a strange energy, like a spark had been lit deep inside. The next morning, Evelyn tried again, this time in front of the mirror, her reflection tired but determined. I command my first $1 million from the universe. I am ready to receive it. She felt ridiculous. She even laughed at herself, but she kept saying it over and over until the words didn't feel like foreign sentences anymore. They began to sound like truths. She carried the phrase with her as she walked to work, repeated it silently while typing emails, whispered it on her lunch break. At first, nothing obvious happened. Her paycheck was still small, her boss was still demanding, her bills still loomed. But Evelyn noticed subtle changes in herself. She stood straighter when speaking to colleagues. She no longer muttered, I can't, or I'm broke. When invited out, instead, she said, I'm choosing where my money goes. She found herself smiling at strangers, offering ideas at meetings where she used to stay silent. It was as if the words she had spoken planted seeds that were now taking root inside her, reshaping how she moved in the world. One afternoon, Her manager announced a new project, messy, complicated, something no one wanted to touch. The old Evelyn would have shrunk back, hoping not to be noticed, but something inside pushed her forward. "I'll take it," she said. The room went quiet. Her manager raised an eyebrow, surprised, but he nodded, scribbling her name down. Evelyn's heart raced. As she sat back down, she remembered Florence's words. "When you are prepared, the opportunity will present itself." That evening, Evelyn returned to her apartment with a strange mix of nerves and excitement. She opened the book again, reading until her eyes blurred. One passage burned into her mind. "Do not limit the channels through which your good can come. Expect your supply from every direction." She closed the book, looked at the ceiling, and whispered with more confidence than before, "I command my first $1,000,000. I don't know how it will come, but I know it is already mine." The rain had stopped. The city hummed outside, alive with possibilities. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt something she had nearly forgotten: hope. Not the fragile kind that withers at the first sign of struggle, but the fierce kind that grows roots. She went to bed that night, not with fear of the bills stacked on her table, but with a calm certainty that the universe had heard her, and that it was beginning to move pieces into place. As she drifted to sleep, one last thought whispered in her mind, quiet but steady, "Your word is your wand." And Evelyn held that wand now, ready to command a new life into being. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Evelyn had ever experienced. Life looked the same on the outside. She still lived in her modest apartment, still rode the crowded subway to her office job, but inside something was shifting. The words she had spoken night after night were echoing through her mind like a steady drumbeat. "I command my first $1,000,000 from the universe. It is mine by divine right." What once felt like a game or wishful thinking now carried a quiet authority. Each repetition anchored her deeper into belief. First opportunity came disguised as something ordinary. While cleaning out her email inbox at work, Evelyn stumbled upon a message she had almost deleted. It had been marked as spam, but the subject line caught her attention: "Free webinar, learn digital marketing basics." Normally, she would have ignored it, assuming it was a scam. But Florence's words came back to her. "When the student is ready, the teacher appears." She clicked the link. The webinar wasn't glamorous. The host spoke about social media ads, search engines, and how small businesses desperately needed online visibility. But something about it lit a spark inside Evelyn. She stayed up that night watching more tutorials, scribbling notes, experimenting with free tools. It felt like learning a new language, one she somehow already knew how to speak. By the end of the week, she offered to create an ad for her cousin's bakery. The ad went live, and within days, the bakery had more foot traffic than it had seen in months. Her cousin handed her a small envelope with cash inside. It wasn't much, but Evelyn held it like treasure. It was the first tangible proof that her words were weaving themselves into reality. Still, doubts clawed at her. At night, when she stared at her ceiling, a cruel voice whispered, "You'll never make $1,000,000. Who do you think you are?" The temptation to believe that voice was strong, but Evelyn remembered Florence's warning, "Your word has power. Never use it against yourself." She would sit up in bed, whispering over the darkness, "I am a magnet for abundance. I command wealth in overflowing measure. The universe responds to my voice." And slowly, the doubts loosened their grip. More small businesses began reaching out after seeing her cousin's results. Word spread faster than she expected. Evelyn created ads, designed simple websites, and learned how to analyze data. Each project paid a little more than the last. Her evenings were filled with work that energized her, not drained her. The trickle of income grew into a steady stream. Then came the night of the networking event. Evelyn almost didn't go. She was exhausted, tempted to curl up at home with her book, but something inside urged her, do not limit the channels. So she dressed simply, slipped the worn copy of Florence's book into her bag for courage, and went. The room was buzzing with chatter and clinking glasses. Evelyn felt out of place among the polished professionals, but she forced herself to mingle. She struck up a conversation with a woman named Claire, who worked at a large investment firm. At first they spoke casually, but when Evelyn mentioned her growing work with small businesses, Claire's eyes lit up. "We've been searching for someone to help us with digital campaigns," she said. "Most agencies overcomplicate things, but you sound like you actually care." She handed Evelyn her card and said, "Call me. I think we can work together." Evelyn's heart pounded as she slipped the card into her purse. On her way home, she pressed her fingers against it like it was a key to a door she had been waiting to open. That night, she whispered into the quiet, her voice steady, her conviction stronger than ever. "This is the channel. This is how the universe delivers my million. I accept it fully." The contract came a week later. Claire's firm hired her to manage campaigns for several high-profile clients. The pay was more than Evelyn had ever imagined for herself. Her days became a blur of meetings, creative brainstorming, and learning at lightning speed. The work was challenging, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt alive. Of course, the voice of fear still tried to creep in. Some nights, as she looked at her expanding bank balance, she thought, "What if this disappears tomorrow? What if I fail?" But she fought back with words, as Florence had taught. She would walk through her apartment like a priestess commanding her temple, declaring, "I am aligned with infinite abundance. This is permanent. This is my divine right. I command wealth without fear." Slowly, she began to notice how her inner world reflected outward. Her posture changed. She carried herself with quiet authority. People at meetings leaned in when she spoke. Friends noticed her glow and asked what she was doing differently. Evelyn only smiled, knowing they wouldn't believe her if she said she was simply speaking her reality into existence. Within months, her bank account looked unrecognizable. The streams of income multiplied, merging into something steady and powerful. She was paying off debts, saving more than she had ever thought possible, and still the opportunities kept coming. Her life had transformed so drastically that sometimes she sat at her kitchen table, the same spot where she once cried over bills, and laughed in disbelief, yet she realized the million wasn't only about money. It was about who she had become, a woman who could speak with power, act with courage, and trust the invisible currents of universe. The forgotten secret Florence had revealed was not just about attracting wealth. It was about becoming a vessel strong enough to hold it. Evelyn carried the book with her everywhere now, its pages full of highlighted lines and handwritten notes. On days when doubt threatened, she opened to her favorite passage, "Your word is your wand. With it, you can carve out whatever you will." She would close her eyes, breathe deeply, and speak the command again, not out of desperation, but out of certainty. "I command my first $1,000,000 from the universe. It is mine, and it comes swiftly." The universe, it seemed, was answering more quickly every day. The morning it happened began like any other. Evelyn woke early, the sun barely rising over the skyline, painting her small apartment in soft gold. She made her coffee, opened her laptop, and prepared for another day of work. Her business had grown so fast it sometimes felt like she was sprinting to keep up, but she loved it. She loved the freedom, the creativity, and most of all, the knowing that she had created this reality with her own words. She still whispered them every morning, her ritual before the day began. "I command my first $1,000,000 from the universe. It is mine by divine right." She said it softly now, not with the trembling doubt of those early nights, but with the confidence of a woman who had seen her words bend reality. She took a sip of her coffee and clicked into her online banking. She expected to see the steady, healthy balance that had been growing each month, but what she saw froze her breath in her throat. $1,004,327.16. She blinked hard, thinking it must be a glitch, a misread number, maybe her tired eyes playing tricks. She refreshed the page. The number remained. Her heart began to pound so loudly she could hear it in her ears. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone, opening the banking app. There it was again, clear, undeniable, her first million. For a long moment she sat perfectly still, coffee cooling beside her, screen glowing like a beacon. She thought of that first night, sitting alone with her stack of bills, whispering words she didn't quite believe. She thought of the rain on her window, loneliness, the quiet desperation, and now here she was, the numbers glowing proof that what she had once commanded had come to pass. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and sudden, spilling before she could stop them. She wasn't crying for the money itself, though the relief of financial security was overwhelming. She was crying because she had discovered the secret Florence Scovel had written decades ago, that words, when spoken with faith, are more than sounds. They are power. They are creation. She realized she had never been waiting for money. She had been waiting for herself, for a version of her who could speak with certainty and expect to be heard by the universe. Later that day, she took a walk through the city, her phone buzzing constantly with client messages and congratulations from friends who had somehow sensed her breakthrough. But Evelyn wasn't in a rush to answer. She walked slowly, noticing details she'd ignored before. The way sunlight glinted off glass buildings, the sound of laughter spilling from a cafe, the rhythm of life pulsing around her. She felt connected to it all, as if the universe was breathing with her, whispering, "See, I told you. You only had to command it." In the weeks that followed, Evelyn's life began to expand in ways she hadn't expected. Money was only one piece. She was invited to speak on a podcast about entrepreneurship, sharing her journey of starting with nothing but a second-hand book and a strange, daring belief. Listeners resonated with her story, and soon she was being asked to appear at events, workshops, even small conferences. At first, she was terrified of public speaking, but she reminded herself, "My words shape worlds." And when she stood on stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, she spoke from her heart, sharing not just strategies but the power of words, the forgotten secret that had changed her life. People approached her afterward with tears in their eyes, telling her they had been lost in debt, hopeless and dead, end jobs, or too afraid to chase their dreams. "Your story gave me courage," one woman said, clutching Evelyn's hand. Evelyn smiled, humbled, realizing that the million had never been about her alone. It was a ripple spreading outward, touching lives she hadn't even known. At night, in the quiet of her apartment, Evelyn still spoke her affirmations, but they had changed. No longer a plea, no longer even a command, but a declaration of alignment. "I live in infinite abundance. Wealth is natural to me. The universe supplies without end." She no longer doubted, she no longer begged. She simply spoke truth, and the truth expanded around her. She also began to mentor young women who reminded her of herself, tired, overworked, trapped in scarcity. She didn't just teach them marketing. She taught them how to command their reality, how to shift their language, how to speak to the universe with conviction. Some laughed at first, just as she had, but when they tried it, when they began to see small shifts, a free gift, an unexpected opportunity, a door opening where there had been none, they came back to her with wide eyes and renewed belief. Evelyn kept Florence's book close by during these meetings, its pages worn, its cover faded. She always quoted the line that had started it all. "Your word is your wand." Months later, she stood on a grand stage in a hotel ballroom, the air buzzing with anticipation. Hundreds of people filled the seats, waiting to hear her speak. Evelyn took the microphone, her heart steady, her voice clear. She told them about her beginning, the rain on the window, the bills stacked high, the whisper of words into the dark. She told them about doubt and fear and how she had chosen to speak against it. She told them about the moment she opened her bank account and saw the million glowing back at her. The audience hung on every word, not because of The money, but because they saw themselves in her. She ended with Florence's timeless truth, her voice strong and unwavering. Your word is your wand. Speak carefully, speak boldly, and watch the universe obey. The applause rose like thunder, filling the ballroom, shaking her to her core. Evelyn smiled, knowing this was only the beginning. Money was just the first manifestation. The true gift was discovering her voice, her power, her ability to shape reality with nothing more than words. That night, as she lay in bed, her window open to the cool night air, Evelyn gazed at the stars. She whispered softly, almost like a prayer, "Thank you, universe, for the million, for the lesson, for the journey." And in the silence that followed, she felt the same presence she had felt on that first night of trembling whispers. Only now it was strong, steady, undeniable. The universe seemed to breathe back, "You have only just begun."